Greetings, YouTubians, and welcome back to Wayne Sharp World, where today we have another episode of Battle of the Blades, and this is actually Battle of the Front Flippers, featuring what I believe to be two of the best budget front flippers on the market right now. That is none other than the Civivi McKenna, as well as the Civivi Exarch. Now, before I go any further into this battle, I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in today. If you like what you see, please do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, follow along, and I will continue to bring you the content. Now, another thing I want to note before I even get into this, both of these knives are going to be linked for purchase in the description below. I will specify that even though these are the Damascus blades with a little different handles on this one, I am basing all the scoring and everything off of just the original base model, which will make no difference in action or ergos or anything like that. But I think that's more of a standard or more of a fair way to base them off of is going off these standard versions. The Damascus is nice. There's really nothing wrong with it. But I think majority of people are going to be looking at these standard versions, so keep that in mind. But they are linked below for purchase, and they're both awesome, amazing front flippers. I think this is a great matchup to have because this is kind of like one of the big questions a lot of people ask. Which one do you prefer, the McKenna or the Exarch? As you guys know, I'm a really big fan of front flippers, so I have a little bit to say about these guys. So let's get right into it. Let's start. As you know, our categories are blade, handle and ergos, value, carry, quality, action, and aesthetics. Giving out points at the end of the matchup, we will count the points and have a winner. Now, let's start with the blade, and let's start with the McKenna. The McKenna is a very nice blade. It's a pretty slicey blade, and it has a pretty good flat grind. All in all, it is an excellent little casual EDC carry. It's, as you can see, a pretty thin stock. I want to say that's, I should have measured that, probably like 0.09, 0.10, something like that. But all in all, a very nice little blade to work with. And I do kind of wish it was a tad longer. I'm still waiting for a bigger version of this McKenna to come out. It's like I believe this blade is like 2.875 inches, which isn't, it's not tiny. I mean, I can make it work. I've already gushed about this knife in previous videos enough to where you guys know I like it, but I am still waiting for I don't know if I want to say an XL version, but like a large version with like a 3.25 inch blade. That would be absolutely perfect for this knife. But even as is, it does have a very nice edge that I've worked with a lot and really come to enjoy. So I'm going to give this blade a 4, and that is that. And now getting into the Exarch. The Exarch is a little bit of a different beast. I think we have a blade coming in right around 3.1 inches. This blade has a hollow grind, which if I can get this spaced right, you can actually see. Let's see. Yeah. So I think you can kind of see there is a pretty good hollow grind on this. As you guys know, Civivi does an excellent job with hollow grinds, and I do like the bit of a longer blade. So all in all, and this also makes, I think, for a very nice gentleman's carry. The McKenna really does too, in all honesty. It does make for a great gentleman's carry. I think this is more of just a more of a simple gentleman's carry. The McKenna has a little bit more of like an artsier look to it, as to where the Exarch, I believe, is just more of the standard, typical, you know, classy office carry. So kind of nice there. But the blade in general, in my opinion, is also a little more slicey than the McKenna, and just with that hollow grind, it really does kind of give it the advantage. So I'm gonna go 4.5 on the blade for the Exarch, which again is pretty darn good, about as good as you can get. I don't know if I'll ever give a 5 out for a budget blade, but we'll see. There's plenty more of these to come. Going into the handle and ergos for the Exarch, they're very good. They're very good. They're just neutral. You know, I feel like sometimes I like this neutral feeling. I think what throws this off just a little for me is the thickness of it. It's not too thick. I mean, it's really not. You know, compared to a lot of knives, it's kind of standard. But I think with it being so narrow, you notice the thickness a little more, and then you feel the pocket clip more. Not necessarily a hot spot, but you do feel it since it's such a narrow handle. But it's just neutral, so it's you know, it's nothing great, but it is really good. I do like it a lot. It fits perfectly in my hand, gives me a 4-finger grip, and I do like how they've kind of I don't want to say chamfered, but kind of like contoured the sides to where it's not just feeling real boxy in your hand. So there is some element of comfort there. So I'm going to give it a 4 because I do really like it, and it does feel good in the hand. I think this is a knife that'll work well with any size hand, whether it be large, medium, or small hands. I think a lot of people are going to come to like this neutral, simple grip. So 4 on the handle and ergos there. When it comes to the McKenna, it's also very good. It's smaller. Large hands probably aren't going to like this knife quite as much, but I mean, I have relatively large hands, and I like it enough to where it's not a full 4-finger grip. It's like a 3.5 finger grip. So I kind of like, my pinky is wrapped right around the end there. So some people may consider that a hot spot. I don't, because most of my grip is coming from my index, middle, and ring finger and thumb. It's not really coming from my pinky, so that's not really the end of the world for me. I like the kind of the curve and angles on the handle here. It sits well in my palm. Pocket clip is no hot spot whatsoever. So it does feel really, really good there. And yeah, really nothing to complain about. So I'm going to give it a pretty solid 4 on ergos as well. I also like the way my thumb sits on the blade a little more than the Exarch, so that's kind of a benefit too. But yeah, good ergos on both these knives. Very, very comparable knives. And when you get into value, that doesn't really change either. The McKenna is D2 and G10 for the base, for the standard model. But the price is coming in at $68, and that is because this is actually designed by Elijah Isham, who's a very well-respected designer in the knife industry. And I think a lot of that $68 is going to be some royalties to him, so which I have absolutely zero problem with. It's an incredible design, and he deserves his cut of the pie. So with a higher price, you do have the $68 on here, and you compare it to the Exarch, which the base model also comes with D2 and G10, and the base price is $49.30. So you're talking a pretty considerable difference, almost $20. So, I mean, when it comes to the value, I mean, you do have to factor in the fact that, you know, this is not just an in-house design. So this is kind of how I'm looking at it here. You got $49.30 and you have $68 with the design of a very well-respected artist in the community. So with that being said, I mean, $68 in royalties being paid really isn't bad, especially when you consider just what you're getting, which I think is a really, really, really good looking knife. And, you know, the $49.30 is obviously great too. So I'm going to give them both 4s. I am, because I don't have an issue. I think both of them are priced reasonably enough to where I don't have an issue with either one. I'm okay with it. So I'm going to give them both 4s for their own reasons. You know, one for bringing in a really good designer that I think a lot of people appreciate and enjoy his designs, and still keeping it at a pretty decent price of $68. And then also for coming up with a design of their own and making it even cheaper, realizing that, you know, they have a little less overhead cost in designing this knife and bringing it to the market. So they kept the price down. So I appreciate that. So 4's around for value. Now carry's another one. Both of these knives have the huge advantage of being front flippers. So there is no flipper tab that's ever going to get in your way on either one of these. And the only real question, the biggest question is, you know, some guys are like huge deep carry nuts. So if you want a super deep carry knife, the knife you're going to want is probably the Exarch. It carries deeper. It doesn't have any of the tip coming out, as you can see on the McKenna. There will be a little of the tip showing, but in my opinion, it's really not a big deal. That's another one. It's such a narrow tip up there. People could easily think it's just a pen. And that doesn't quite look like a pen, but doesn't exactly scream knife either. So nothing to worry about there. I will say the McKenna is considerably lighter. Obviously, I think just size in general will have a lot to do with it, but just holding these two in hand, you really do notice the lighter weight, or the less weight in the McKenna, as well as the length. You're going to have a little less going down into your pocket. So something to consider there. Me personally, they both carry absolutely fine. Really no issue whatsoever. Comparing thicknesses, the McKenna is thinner. So I will say, you know, comparing the two, the McKenna does kind of just disappear in the pocket. Like I said, it is lighter, it's smaller, it takes up less room in the pocket. So, you know, in its own way, it disappears. But then the Exarch literally disappears, because as far as visually, because I mean, you see like maybe, why am I having trouble focus? There you go. You see like basically just that much. So it's pretty much just disappearing in your pocket visually. So when it comes to that, you know, they're both great. They're both 4.5s. It's hard to really take one away from either one because they're both designed to be great carries, which is another reason why I think either one of these knives both make great office carries or gentleman's carries, depending on whatever event or situation you would be carrying it in. So 4.5s on carries there. And when it comes to quality, again, they're both Civivis. That's kind of the hard thing about pairing Civivis up, because this category is 99.999% of the time both going to be a wash, because Civivi has, in my opinion, the most consistent quality control. I would venture to say of any manufacturer out there, period. I mean, obviously that goes with We, so We and Civivi are in the same basket there, but I like I've said before, I have had more Riots with quality issues than I have Civivis. And yes, I've had a lot more Civivis, which is even more impressive. They just do a fantastic job, and that doesn't change with these two knives. Both of them have pretty flawless blades with really good edges. You go look into the handle, and there's nothing. I mean, there's no flaws, there's no scratches, there's no misalignments or something not locking up or shaking or moving that shouldn't be. It's just the definition of consistency. I'm not going to say perfection, but consistency. Consistency is what will pull any company or manufacturer ahead, and you have that day after day with Civivi. They're as consistent as it gets when it comes to quality. So 4.5 around for both these knives. They're just fantastic. No issues whatsoever on the quality. And going into the action, yeah, they're both good. They're both on bearings, and they both pass the reach around test. And that's one of my big tests for a front flipper. If you can do that reach around, it makes it very easy to deploy the blade. It also means you have a pretty well dialed in detent, and you definitely have that on both of these. They just both feel great. Another thing that I really run front flippers through is the ability to front flip them without having to do the wrist thing. You shouldn't have to. No wrist. Pops right out, and you can do it all day. No wrist required. Same for the Exarch. Just absolutely fantastic. Just it's butter. And the Exarch may actually feel a little better just because you have the bigger blade. You have a little more thwack when it comes out. Obviously, they're both running on bearings, and both these bearings are pretty darn smooth. No wrist. It just pops out. They're both so good. So even though the McKenna does sound a little better, I mean, that again, there's nothing that you could do to the outside of making the McKenna bigger. You can't really. There's nothing you can do to rival that. So I don't think that warrants taking any points away from the McKenna. So again, these are both 4.5s. They both pass everything I look for in a front flipper. They just all day. It's another reason that I've had these knives for so long, and I still have both of these, because they're just buttery smooth action. They both fall and shake shut rather easily, and there's nothing that I really have to knock on them for in action. I kind of wish there was. This is starting to become kind of boring, right? They're all getting high scores, but again, that's the Civivi way. 4.5 on action for both of them. And then it comes to aesthetics. And aesthetics, they're, when it comes to aesthetics on Civivis, they usually all look good. The one thing that I do kind of pull away from both of them on is the Civivi logo. I just kind of wish they would do something to calm these down a little more. I also, for the record, I think a lot of you guys know, I'm just not a big fan of branded pivots. I would rather just have that logo somewhere on the blade or the spine. I'm just not a huge... I feel like when you put a brand on the logo, or when you put a brand on the pivot, it just kind of, it pulls you front and center to just like, boom, there's the brand. And that's what you're going for. I mean, at the end of the day, I guess that does kind of make sense. That's what you want. But when it comes, for me, I don't want it to pop, the branding. I want the knife in general to pop. I want the whole knife in general to be like, bam, look at me. I don't want it to be like, bam, look at that, you know? So for me, it's not ideal, but it's still, you know, it is what it is. I think we've all come to get used to that from Civivi. So not a huge issue there. So I take a little off for just because of that. But other than that, these both look great. I love the way the blade of the McKenna matches, like kind of goes with the flow of the handle. It's kind of like the blade just reversed almost outside of this area here, but you know, the handle back there matched to the tip. It really is just an extremely well-designed knife from Elijah Isham. It has a very artsy feel and look to it, but it just feels as good as hand, and it looks good from tip to bottom. So very excellent design here from Elijah. I'm going to give this a 4 in the aesthetic category. And going into the Exarch, again, it's another one. It's very simple, but the blade gives it that flair with that nice tip and that simple drop point, but also simple, but just very, very classy and a pretty elegant looking knife. The Damascus obviously helps with that, but I'm talking more just the actual outline and blade shape is very, very attractive. Goes well with the handle. I like the blade to handle ratio. It's not too much one way or the other. So just another very solid, clean design from Civivi. Gonna give this a 4 as well. Now, if you guys have been following the scoring here, we have a very, very close matchup, and we have a final score of 30 to 29.5 going to the Exarch. The Exarch pulled this one off, and if you were to ask me just upfront and blunt before I did anything like this, who's the winner? I probably would have said the McKenna because I've had it longer and I really do love it. But when you really compare the two, the Exarch does slightly, and I mean ever so slightly, edge it out. And really, it's just in the blade. The hollow grind and the extra little bit of sliciness that you get out of this blade is really the only thing that that gets it to edge out the McKenna. But I will say, if you want to buy a front flipper, your first ever front flipper, and you just want one that's going to be really easy to deploy, I would recommend the McKenna. The McKenna is my #1 most recommended front flipper for ease of flipping and for beginners. It's an excellent one. The Exarch's also really good, though. It's very easy. But I think for most people, the McKenna, if you're okay with the looks of it, is going to be the easiest beginner front flipper for you. But I would also say, one more time, the Exarch is closely behind that. So what you have here are 2 excellent front flippers for beginners. And when it comes to the scoring, the Exarch edges it out by just a little, but either one is a great pickup. If anyone is interested in picking up a front flipper, I highly, highly, highly recommend either one of these two. This is another reason I did the video, to get that out there, because I have a lot of people asking me all the time, which front flipper should I get if I'm a beginner, if I want to get my first one. These two are both excellent options. They're the two I would recommend more than any other front flipper out there. So there they are, guys. Check them out. Let me know what you think. I'm sure a lot of you have probably had one or both of them. If you haven't, pick one up in the description below and let me know what you think. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and until the next one, I'm out.